Hello, friends. Here I am once again, ready to talk about a story that I'd certainly like to see made public. It's about my father and how he was absolutely screwed by the federal government. He was a poor farm boy from Iowa who got drafted into the Korean War, into the Marines. My mother said my grandmother was absolutely hysterical when she sent him off because she didn't think she'd see him again. He went to El Toro Marine Base in Orange County, California. That's why I live in San Diego, because he came back and married my mother and stayed. He was a navigator and flew 38 missions in Korea, sometimes with the bottom shot out of the plane. Have you ever had a story in your family that everyone has heard about but doesn't really know the details and nobody really thinks to ask? That's kind of the story I have, because when my dad came back to Orange County to marry my mother, they ended up waiting 6 years before I was born, and everyone else had children. And the doctors told him, and I don't know which doctors, but they said he was probably sterile due to his radiation exposure during the war. And I was just a little kid growing up. I didn't think to ask what radiation, what exposure, why was he exposed? Didn't think of it. I just knew this growing up. So at the end of his life, when he was in his 70s, he got kidney cancer, and he was extremely abusive to me, narcissistic. I actually had PTSD from growing up in that family, but what I saw him go through with its cancer, I swear I forgave him everything. What a horrible, horrible thing to do to somebody. He just couldn't outrun it. He had his bladder removed. He had to have a colostomy bag. He had his kidney removed. Of course, he had chemo. They gave him steroids. He had to be psychologically evaluated because he took the steroids. It went on and on and on. And he kept getting worse and worse and worse for 2 years until he just finally drifted off and was dead. And after he died, my mother said, "I don't think those experiments helped at all." And I said, "What experiments?" Because I wasn't in on this. Nobody in the family wanted me around. It was my mother and my sister that masterminded all of this, and my mom didn't know anything about these experiments. So one day I asked my sister, like, what the heck? I had a friend who was here in America from England studying Concerta, and he was a researcher. So I had asked him, and I said, like, what experiments? What are they talking about? And his face turned red, and he started to laugh. And he never did tell me. So that's why I went ahead and asked my sister, what was going on. And she told me that he got the kidney cancer as a result of being exposed to radiation during the war. And that's pretty much all she knew. These doctors whoever they were. I don't know if my dad told his doctor that he had been exposed because he had been told, or if he had certain doctors that he had been attached to all this time. I don't know, and I wish I did, and now I'll never know. But it was a big mystery to me until Candace Owens recommended the book Chaos by Tom O'Neill. It's a big red book, and it talks about the Manson family in the 60s. They murdered the Tates, Sharon Tate and the LaBianca couple. And of course, that was huge news all over the place, a big to-do deal. You know, kind of like the death of Charlie Kirk. It just goes on and on and on and on. And this author connected the doctor who did those mind control, MK Ultra mind control experiments to the biowarfare used on the airmen that fought in the Korean War. I mean, you cannot imagine. My teeth nearly fell out while I was reading this. And apparently, there were all these rogue experiments done through the CIA, and they were not well monitored. This doctor could just do whatever he wanted, Dr. West, and one of them was to force our airmen to fly through radiation to see what it would do to them. And boy, I sure know now, don't I, what they did to these innocent young men. And, I'm getting kind of worked up, but the author talked about this man named Jimmy Shaver, and he and a buddy, he was an airman during Korea, and he and a buddy went into a bar to have a drink. Well, there was a couple in there having a drink, and they left her kids in the parking lot to play. I think they were like 6 and 8 years old. So the little girl disappeared, and they found her underwear tied on the handle of the car door. And Jimmy Shaver came out of the woods all scratched up, and he didn't remember anything that had happened. He couldn't even recognize his own wife. And ultimately, there was very flimsy evidence, and they just tried him and convicted him and executed him, and he was completely innocent. He was most likely a victim of MK Ultra. So I'm very grateful to have gotten answers. If I was going to say something else about it, I can't remember now, but yeah, I've never trusted the government, and I've been a targeted individual for 7 years, and it has been one wild ride. I can tell you that. Well, stay safe out there, and thank you for listening.